The distress beacon pinged insistently on Roman's console, cutting through the silence of his repair station orbiting the debris field of Sector 7. As a freelance engineer working the Outer Rim, he'd learned to ignore most calls. Pirates often used fake signals to lure in good Samaritans. But this one was different. The encryption signature was military grade, and the ship's energy readings were unlike anything in his database. Roman guided his modest vessel toward the source, maneuvering through twisted metal and frozen corpses, remnants of last month's battle between colonial forces and raiders. When he finally spotted the damaged craft, his breath caught. It was sleek, angular, and built from a dark alloy that seemed to absorb light itself. Battle scars marred its hull, but even crippled it radiated power. "This is Engineer Roman Castellanos responding to your distress call," he transmitted. "I'm approaching your starboard airlock." Static crackled. Then a voice emerged, female commanding despite evident exhaustion. "Proceed. I'm sealing inner chambers." The airlock accepted his override codes surprisingly easily, as if the ship's AI had been expecting help. Roman cycled through, emergency kit in hand, and froze when he saw her. She stood in the corridor, one hand pressed against the wall for support, the other gripping a plasma blade still humming with residual charge. Her armor was obsidian black, form-fitting and covered in glowing circuit-like patterns that pulsed with faint blue light. Blood startlingly red and human seeped from a gash along her ribs, but it was her eyes that held him captive, fierce, calculating, and carrying the weight of someone who'd seen 1,000 battles. "Kendall," she said simply, as if the single name should mean something. "Roman, you're hurt." He moved forward carefully, hands visible. "I'm just an engineer, but I know field medicine. Let me help." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded curtly and lowered herself onto a bench. As Roman worked, cleaning and sealing the wound with sinskin, he couldn't help noticing details that didn't add up. Her armor wasn't standard military issue, it was custom, integrated with technology he'd only read about in theoretical journals. The ship's interior, now that he looked closer, contained command interfaces far beyond what a simple warrior would need. "What happened here?" he asked, applying the final layer of medical gel. "Ambush, treachery from within my own ranks." Kendall's jaw tightened. "They wanted to prevent me from reaching the Concordant Summit. Without my presence, the treaty will fail, and war will consume the outer systems." Roman sat back on his heels. "You're a diplomat." Something flickered in her expression, amusement perhaps, or resignation. Among other things, over the next 3 hours, Roman worked to restore her ship's primary systems. The engineering was extraordinary, decades ahead of anything he'd encountered. The power core alone could fuel a small colony. When he commented on it, Kendall simply said, "My people value efficiency." They fell into an easy rhythm, her directing him through unfamiliar systems while he applied practical solutions to theoretical problems. She was brilliant, he realized, with an understanding of quantum mechanics and hyperspace navigation that rivaled the best scientists he'd known. Yet she wore it lightly, as naturally as breathing. "There," Roman said finally, wiping grease from his hands. "Your hyperdrive will hold for one jump. It'll get you to wherever you need to go, but you'll need a full overhaul after that. You have my gratitude." Engineer Castellanos. Kendall stood, and for the first time, she seemed to truly see him not as a tool or a threat, but as a person. "Your skill is unexpected in this sector." Roman shrugged. "I get by. Most people out here just need someone who can keep their boats running." He paused. "But you're not most people, are you?" She smiled then, and it transformed her face from warrior stern to something almost warm. "No, I suppose I'm not. The summit you mentioned, it must be important. Who are you really?" Kendall. Before she could answer, the ship's communications array blazed to life. Multiple channels, all broadcasting simultaneously, all carrying the same desperate message. "Empress, we've received word of the attack. The Imperial fleet is mobilizing to." Kendall silenced it with a gesture, but the damage was done. Roman stared at her, pieces clicking into place with dizzying speed. The advanced technology, the command presence, the assassination attempt, the treaty that would prevent war across entire systems. "You're not a warrior," he breathed. "You're the Galactic Empress." Kendall Vexteria, ruler of the Dominion spanning 47 star systems, met his eyes steadily. "I was both long before I was either. Does it change what you've done here today?" Roman thought about it, about the woman who'd stood bleeding but unbowed, who'd worked alongside him with grease under her fingernails, who'd trusted a stranger when trust could have meant her death. "No," he decided. "No, it doesn't." She nodded, satisfied. "The galaxy needs engineers like you, Roman, people who see a problem and fix it, who help because it's the right thing to do." She accessed a panel on her wrist, and his station's account suddenly showed a credit transfer that made his head spin. "This is standard Imperial compensation for emergency services rendered. That's enough to buy 10 stations like mine. Consider it an investment. When this summit succeeds, and it will, the Outer Rim will need good engineers to help rebuild." She moved toward the command deck, then paused. "If you ever tire of this sector, the Imperial Engineering Corps could use someone with your talents and your discretion." Roman watched as her ship powered up, systems humming with restored vitality. Through the viewport he saw her take the pilot's seat, every inch the ruler of nations. Yet he'd never forget the warrior who'd trusted him, the brilliant mind who'd worked beside him as an equal. As she vanished into hyperspace, Roman sat in his quiet station and wondered if he'd just witnessed history being made, or if he'd simply done what any decent person would do. Perhaps, he thought, that was the same thing after all.